When reading a line of poetry in Latin, it is important to be able to pronounce each individual Latin word and understand the syllables of each of those words. The way that the poetry is written is in a certain pattern of pronunciation of syllables that we call a meter, where syllables are either stressed or unstressed, which we will mark in Latin as being a long or a short syllable. The way that we determine this is through the spelling patterns of a Latin word. In order to determine if a syllable is long in Latin, there are three different strategies that we can take. First, it's important to note that we will be marking these syllables as stressed or unstressed. If a syllable is long, we will simply mark it with a line over top to indicate long. The first way to determine if a syllable is long is if it is already long by nature. This simply means that within the actual Latin poetry, the syllable of a Latin word already has a little line above the syllable to indicate that it is long. For instance, the Latin word servi. First and foremost, keep in mind that the word servi is a two-syllable word, but we are focusing for the purpose of this part of the notes on the second syllable here, which does already have that little long by nature mark over top of the I. Therefore, we would just highlight that by adding our own long mark to indicate that servi, the we part of that word, is a long syllable. The second way that a syllable would be marked long is something that we call two consonants. What this means is that the vowel of a syllable is followed by a minimum of two consonants in a row. For example, that same word servi. Again, we know that the second of the two syllables of servi is long because of the long by nature mark. But what about the first syllable? This syllable contains a vowel of the letter E. And what we want to do is count how many vowel or how many consonants follow that vowel. The R would be one consonant and the V would be two consonants, which proves that this first syllable of servi is also a stressed or long syllable. If we look at the phrase in via and focus on the first word in is one syllable, which contains the vowel of an I. This I is followed by one consonant. But you are allowed to, after the space in between two words, consider the first letter of the following word to be a second consonant for that I in to be marked as long or short. So even though these two words are separated by a space, the vowel of the syllable in does have one consonant and two consonants that immediately follow it. Therefore, in, a one-syllable word, would be long. This would also occur in the case where one word ends in a vowel, which has no consonants attached to it, but the following word does begin with immediately two consonants in a row, such as the F and the R. Therefore, in aqua, the second syllable here, that is that lone A at the end of the word, is in fact long because it is followed by two consonants. The third and final way to mark a syllable long is if the syllable is a diphthong, which remember a diphthong in Latin is two vowels together that produce one sound. Most commonly, we use the diphthong of AE, but we also have AU as a common diphthong, and we will see here in Latin for the OE as a common diphthong. The entire diphthong of a pronounced word would be marked with a long mark. So in the Latin word veli, the I diphthong would be marked long. In the word nauta, the ow, au would be marked long. And then in this last word here, our diphthong is oe, which we are going to pronounce oi. So in poina, the oi part would be long as well. If a syllable is not long, it would be marked with a short mark, which we will indicate in our Latin here by a U. The way to tell if a syllable is short is quite simply if it is not long. Anything that is not following one of the three long rules will be marked with a short mark of the U. For example, the Latin phrase carpe diem. First, we would want to check to see which of the syllables in carpe diem are long, and anything left over would get a short mark. I checked first to see if there are any long by nature marks, which I can see that above all of the syllables here in Carpe Diem, there are no already little long marks. The next easiest thing to check for is the diphthongs, because we're simply looking for an AE, an AU, or an OE, and I do not see any diphthongs in these two words, so I'm left to use this two consonant rule for each of the syllables in the phrase. For the first word, carpe is two syllables, therefore we're looking to make two marks. In the first syllable, car, we have the vowel of the A, followed by R and P, which are two consonants in a row, making car in carpe a long mark. Pay, on the other hand, ends in this vowel of the E, which we are allowed to check the following word for our two consonants. There is one in D, but the following letter is not a consonant, but rather another vowel, which means that the pay in carpe cannot be long. It is a short syllable. The next word, DM, is also two syllables. The first of those syllables, D, has an I in it as our vowel, which is followed immediately by another vowel, meaning it is not a two-consonant long mark. It is also short. And then finally, we have the M syllable, where the vowel of the E is only followed by one consonant, so we cannot determine this to be long because there are not two consonants there. We would mark this as short as well. A few special notes to consider is that QU is considered to be one consonant together. Think of it like one letter. It's not really a consonant and the vowel of a U, but rather that these two letters would always be used side by side in this way. Consider them as one letter. Conversely, X and Z are each considered to be two consonants apiece. So if you have the letter X in a word, X alone does count as two consonants. Also, Z would count as two consonants. And the third special note to consider is that sometimes the letters R and L can be tricky. Sometimes R or L is sort of invisible. Sometimes they count as two. I will let you know when they are acting in a tricky way. There is also a very important note that is something we call an elision. An elision is when we omit a syllable during speaking. It's very similar in the English language to a contraction. For instance, if you have the phrase I am is a two-syllable phrase of two words. If we connect those two words with an apostrophe to become I apostrophe am, we are contracting I am to be I'm, which is now only one syllable. So we go from I am two syllables to I'm one syllable. So in connecting those two words together, what we've done is eliminated one of the original syllables to make it shorter when pronounced. Latin can do something similar. We don't use an apostrophe, but this term called an elision would occur only in three different circumstances. So you can't just do it with any words that you want. It is only 3 times that you're allowed to make an elision. The first of those ways is when you have two words side by side in a line of poetry, where the first of those two words ends in a vowel, and the second of those two words begins with a vowel. We call this vowel as the rule. So for example, take aspecto. There is a vowel ending on the first word and a vowel beginning in the following word. We will elide those two words together by connecting them with a tail. And what happens is the first out of those two syllables, which would be the first vowel, is now eliminated. That word is no longer te-que. The que part is now sort of contracting with the aspecto to make the phrase now te quaspectu. The second circumstance when a elision would occur is if it is M plus vowel, meaning that one word ends in the letter M and the immediate following word begins with a vowel. For instance, ardentem et torva. Ardentem ends in the letter M and the immediate following word begins with a vowel. We will elide them together with the tail, and the entire first syllable of M, which is pronounced with the E and the M there, is now eliminated. making this phrase, instead of ardentem et, now become ardentet. The third and final way an elision would occur is something we call vowel plus H, where, again, the first word ends in a vowel and the following word begins with an H. In the example phrase, nescia quae humanis, the quae and the humanis would elide together because of the E followed by an H, and the A out of the quae would disappear. So now instead of nescia quae humanis, it becomes nescia quumanis. And that is how you scan syllables in a line of poetry. We will start to look at examples of lines of poetry and scanning all the long and short marks. And what you see here is the logical sequence of steps that you should take in order to successfully scan a line of poetry. First and foremost, no matter what, you check for elisions. Always look at each of the words in a line of poetry and analyze if we have the end letter and beginning letter to be vowel vowel, M vowel, or vowel H. You always want to do the elisions first. The reason why is because when doing elisions, what we do is cross out syllables. So we don't want to accidentally scan a syllable if we don't need to because we forgot to elide them together. So always check for elisions first. Number 2, check for long by natures. Number 3, check for diphthongs. And then lastly, the most time-consuming of all of the rules is checking for those consonants. So we would look at each of the syllables, analyze if the vowel within a syllable is followed by 2 consonants or more, mark it long. If it is not followed by at least 2 consonants, then we go ahead and mark that short. Here's an example line of poetry, well, 2 lines. So we consider first the elision. So what I do is I always look in between the space of each word in a line and just double check to see if there's a vowel vowel, M vowel, or a vowel H. So here we have a T, which is not a vowel, or an M followed by a vowel of an A, but that is not one of the 3 elision rules. Then we have SC. Here we have E and I, which is vowel vowel. So what I do is I connect those together and I get rid of the first one. Then I have NL, ER, and this is the end of the line after refulsit. We do not consider the T out of refulsit and the O of the next line. Once you reach the end of the line, you are done connecting elisions together in that line. In the second line here, I again repeat the process of looking in between each of the words, seeing if they are following any of the vowel vowel, M vowel, or vowel H. And here again, I see a vowel vowel with the E and the I, so I elide and cross out the first one, and then the A and D is not an elision. So there are my elisions already marked. Now I'm going to check for long by natures. So again, long by natures are already provided to you, so they should be pretty obvious. And what I do is I just redraw those directly over top of the same letters. Okay, os, the O here, and then 2 in a row on the end of this line. Next thing I do is I check for diphthongs, AE, AU, or OE together. Immediately I see this AE here on this word, so I will write the long mark over top of both the A and the E. EA is not a diphthong, it's AE, so watch it there. I'm going to keep going, scanning, and that is the only diphthong. So I am left now with checking for the consonants. It's very important that you do it word by word. Say the Latin word out loud first so that you know how many syllables there are to be marked. This first word here is pronounced restitit, which is 3 syllables. I need 3 marks on this word. The first syllable of the res has the E vowel here, and I want to count to see if there are 2 consonants following this. There is the S and a T, that is 2 consonants. Therefore, the first of the 3 syllables, the res, is long. Next, I have the sti part of the word. The I in this syllable is followed by a T and then another I. So that is not 2 consonants, only 1. So I'm going to put a short mark here. And the last part of this word, the final it, is an I followed by a T, which is only one consonant, but don't forget, you can look to the next word. Unfortunately, it is a vowel of an A, so we once again do not reach our two consonants, making the final of the three syllables also short. So restitit would be a long, short syllabled word. Next up, we have Aeneas. This is actually the main character of our poem. His name is pronounced Aeneas, which is three syllables. Notice how the A and the ni are already marked with our long marks. So all we have left is the S part of his name, which has an A vowel followed by an S, which is one consonant. You can look to the next word. It is a C, that is two consonants, meaning that the name Aeneas is three long marks in a row. Next up, we have the word Clara-quay, but don't forget, there's an elision here. The quay part doesn't exist anymore. It is only Clara, both of which were long by nature, so it's done. Then we go to the word in. In is one syllable. In has the vowel of the I followed by N and then L in the following word, making in two consonants, which is long. The next word, luke, is two syllables. The lu in luke is marked long by nature. The K part here has the vowel of the E. There are no directly connected consonants, so we need to look to the next word. I have an R, but then an E, which is not two consonants. Therefore, the K in luke is short. The last word, refulsit, is three syllables. The sit at the end is done because it's long by nature. So all we have is re and full to do. Re has an E in it, followed by only an F, making it short. And the full has a U, followed by L and S, making it long. Try the next line on your own.